Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today, we're going to be learning how to cook a Filipino favorite called pancit. In Filipino cuisine, pancit are dishes usually made with rice noodles. Noodles were introduced to the Philippines early on by Chinese settlers and over the centuries has been adopted into local cuisine, of which there are now numerous variants and types. Today's recipe is Bihon Pancit. Before we get started, I invite you to hit the subscribe button if you like the content on this channel. Also give me a thumbs up if you like this video, and share this video with your friends. So I attempted to make pancit on my own without seeking professional help, which I probably should have done to begin with, but this is my process that I used to try out pancit for the first time. I sauteed some onions and some garlic, then I added my chopped vegetables and cooked that down. Once the vegetables were cooked down enough, I removed them from the pan, added some more oil, tossed in my shrimp and other meat. I removed the meat from the heat once they were cooked. I then brought my broth to a boil. I used 3 cups of broth, and then I allowed that to come to a boil. Once boiling, I added my noodles to the pan and soaked them completely and allowed the noodles to cook. Once the noodles had cooked, I went ahead and added back in my vegetables and began to incorporate that into the noodles. I then added the meat back into the mixture as well and fully incorporated that. Here is probably where I went wrong. I also squeezed some lemon and lime in addition to pepper and calamansi juice, and then topped it with some green onions. While it didn't have a bad taste, it certainly wasn't authentically Filipino. The result was too much citrus and a little too much of that beef broth, and so this prompted me to get professional help and create a whole new cooking segment for my channel. In this new cooking segment for my channel, I am titling it Cooking with Ate Viva. She is a good friend of mine, and she is one of the best cooks I know, so she is showing me how to make pancit. To get started, you will need to add 2 chicken thighs to a pan of water. Bring that water to a boil. Add in several different seasonings, including garlic, salt, pepper, and any other seasonings you want. This will not only cook the chicken, but also create a chicken broth. Next, you will need to prep your vegetables. For this pan, we are using a double pack of noodles, so we are going to slice off and create maybe 2 to 3 cups of sliced cabbage. You'll also need to have some snow peas, some carrots, and some green beans. For the green beans, you will need to julienne the green beans and cut off the ends. For the snow peas, you will just need to cut off the ends of the snow peas, and those will be ready to go. For this recipe, I did just go ahead and buy the matchstick carrots, and so those were already cut up. But if you don't, go ahead and just julienne your carrots to match your green beans. Once your chicken is fully cooked, you'll want to go ahead and shred the chicken, but you want to keep the broth because we are going to use the broth to cook our noodles in. The next thing we do is saute the shrimp. We sauteed it lightly in some oil, garlic, and a little bit of onions just to give it a little bit of flavor. And we took it off the heat just prior to them being fully cooked. With the same oil in the pan, we added some more chopped garlic to it. We also added some onions and let those saute so that the flavors will really develop. Next, we dumped in all of our chopped vegetables and began to incorporate all of those flavors together. And what we're going to do is we're going to allow these vegetables to cook down. You don't want them too soggy. You want still a crunch, but you want the vegetables to just wilt. So we covered it so that the steam would come back into the vegetables themselves and begin a good cooking process. In addition, you will want to cook these vegetables on low heat. You don't want to cook them too fast, otherwise they will burn. The process of actually cooking these vegetables took about 10 to 15 minutes. Halfway through the process of cooking the vegetables, we added some oyster sauce to the vegetables. I'd say we added about maybe 2 to 3 tablespoons of oyster sauce, and that will just start developing the flavor in the vegetable. We then covered the vegetables again for another 5 minutes, and towards the end of the cooking process, we added some soy sauce to taste. And so you can add a little or as much soy sauce as you want. I would recommend, again, 2 to 3 tablespoons of soy sauce. Once the vegetables were done, we removed them from the heat so that it would stop the cooking process, but we left the broth that was left over from the water in the vegetables and the soy sauce in the pan. The next thing we did was strain the broth over a strainer to catch any of the seasonings and the onions that we put in with the chicken. We then added more soy sauce and more oyster sauce to taste, and we also added pepper and adobo seasonings. We then stirred the mixture together, and then we brought the broth to a boil. I've listed everything in this recipe down in the description below. And if you want to see more videos like this one, I've also listed a few videos that you may like. I would like to give a special shout out to Viva and her family for hosting me in their home and teaching me this recipe. Salamat, Viva! Now that the water is at a boil, we're going to add our noodles. We're going to make sure they're completely saturated in the water and allow the noodles to soak up the water. During this cooking process, we're going to continue to come back and stir the noodles so that all of the noodles are saturated completely in the broth. Once most of the broth has been soaked up by the noodles, we're going to go ahead and add our chicken and incorporate that and let that continue to boil and cook down. About 5 minutes later, now that most of the broth has been soaked up by the noodles, we're going to go ahead and add back in our shrimp. We don't want to add it too soon because we don't want to overcook the shrimp, but we want the shrimp to go ahead and grab some of the flavor of the broth. 5 minutes later, we added back in our vegetables and incorporated all of the meat, vegetables, and noodles together. We allowed that to cook down a little further, a few more minutes, and then we moved it into its own new pan after we took it off the heat. At this point, you can add more pepper or seasoning to taste, as well as getting yourself some calamansi to sprinkle over the top, a nice citrus pop to a beautiful dish. If you don't have calamansi, a nice spritz of lemon will also do the trick. Well, there you have it, a staple for any meal. And the first in our series of cooking with Ate Viva. Thanks again, Viva! Next up in our series is something you don't want to miss: flan. Want to see more? Subscribe here to my YouTube channel and turn on the notifications so you are notified every time I drop a video. You can also follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter for all the latest updates and paintings. Thanks again so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.